Hello, how you doing? Prepare for a really long one because, yep, after I teased you guys with the idea of maybe I could do a DreamWorks tier list. Well, I did a poll with the DreamWorks animated tier list as well as a Walt Disney animation tier list, and you guys, most of you voted DreamWorks. So, yep, that's what we're doing. And yep, and I ended up watching two movies a week. So, because I just wanted to watch other films as well. So yeah, it took me a long time to get through all of these. We have 48 movies to go through, so this is gonna be a long video. But yep, I'm pretty excited to talk about a huge chunk of these movies. And yep, you guys asked for it, or you guys voted for this, so here it is. Is DreamWorks is a pretty cool studio. I'm not like as passionate like as Pixar, where I've grown up with all their movies basically. DreamWorks, I've grown up, yeah, with a huge chunk of their movies, but there are actually a huge chunk that I hadn't seen before I had to make this video. So yeah, it was pretty cool discovering them. And what else is there to say? Oh, and because I watched these movies, he's like so far away from each other, I don't remember my thoughts on all of them. So unlike my other tier list videos, I ended up just full on writing a script, like just kind of explaining my thoughts on these movies, and we're just gonna do these from worst to best as well. Like we're not, yeah, that's just how I thought about doing it. So without further ado, let's get started. So I guess what is my least favorite DreamWorks movie? Hmm, well, I might get some flack for this. I'm not sure, but for me, the worst DreamWorks movie was Turbo. Yeah, it actually was. Here's what I wrote down. I'm sorry if I'm gonna be like having my eyes face the script instead of the camera, but yeah, yeah. Wow, Turbo was terrible. It is legitimately one of the most boring films I've ever seen. It literally feels like the worst Illumination movies with its uncreative story, everything about it, everything being sanitized just so every child on the planet can enjoy it, and having practically nothing to enjoy. I actually struggled to think of anything I liked because I couldn't think of any. The story is just what if a snail could go super fast, and it's just so basic and played out. It's a generic underdog story in the same vein as Ratatouille, but it's not as nuanced at all. None of the jokes are funny. All slapstick and action scenes have surprisingly low energy that I couldn't believe it. This movie honestly just feels like DreamWorks made it to get another product out of the way because there's no passion or effort in sight. I can't believe this movie was so bad, but there you go. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Yep. I'm wondering how much of these I'm gonna have to add, but yeah, I thought Turbo was really really boring. Don't think I'll watch it again. Next I have The Boss Baby Family Business, which is also in bad. And The Boss Baby 2 was just as bad as I expected it to be, but it was also way more boring than the first one. Like, at least the first movie had a so bad it's good charm to it. Meanwhile, this one just exists as an unnecessary sequel. Firstly, it felt like they didn't want to commit to having Tim and Ted as adults and just thought they should revert them back to the same age as they were in the first film, which was annoying to see. Then the villain story isn't as insane, where it's just babies rising up against parents. You couldn't have come up with anything even more crazy than that basic idea. Then the conflict between the brothers and Tim and his daughter weren't engaging, and I just didn't care. Weirdly, I felt like this one tried even harder to be an emotional roller coaster, but it just comes off as pitiful. Oh, I actually, man, I wrote the word pitiful down. I actually kind of feel bad for that. That's a bit okay. Overall, this film just disappointed me with how I got so little out of it, and somehow it's the second worst movie with Jeff. And somehow it's only the second worst movie with Jeff Goldblum I've ever seen. I didn't write down what my least favorite was, but yeah, my least favorite Jeff Goldblum movie is Independence Day 2. Yeah, I forgot to write down actually. Jeff Goldblum. It's weird to think he's in a Boss Baby movie, but he actually didn't phone this one in. It seemed like he had fun recording his lines, which is weird to think about for a Boss Baby movie, but yeah. Next, I have the original Boss Baby, also in bad. And yeah, some of these I I also wrote in my letterbox reviews, I willingly chose to sit through The Boss Baby solely because I want to be a DreamWorks completionist. I feel like I deserve $1 million now. I genuinely cannot believe this movie exists. A film with the most insane premise of all time, with Alec Baldwin voicing a flippin' baby and saying baby-related jokes, over-the-top action that makes me question what I'm seeing, a ridiculous story that doesn't make any sense, a laughable emotional core that is attempting to be deep, and this was nominated for Best Animated Feature in the same year we had the Lego Batman movie and Coco. The fact that we live in a world with this flick is a fact that will never not blow my mind. Yeah, pretty much. That's yeah, like I mean, it is one of those. I do feel like it's one of those so bad it's good movies. Like I forgot to mention this too, but the whole villain story is that he wants to create these forever puppies that will stay cute forever, and that'll somehow make parents want to stop having babies, and so will buy puppies. Like that's such an insane story that I'm like that's so insane, but that's kind of fun, you know. It's so ridiculous, you know. Next I have, oh man, I almost feel bad for this because I have a huge Trolls fan in my Discord server who loves all three movies. Meanwhile, I did not care for any of them. And my least favorite one was Trolls World Tour. Which one is that? Oh, this one. Also in bad. What is there to say? Trolls World Tour is just a really bad movie, and I was bored watching it, and I didn't like it. It's a movie that expands the world in a kind of cool way, but then it leads to a boring plot where the villain wants to grab every single string, but we don't see that. But we don't see most of that because we're wasting time with Poppy and Branches just doing stuff and singing ridiculous song covers that were so cringy. They literally did a cover of Who Let the Dogs Out. That was the cringiest thing I've seen in a long time. No, I actually remember watching that and being all, oh my gosh, it was painful. Also, the movie ends with all trolls deciding to get along and live together in harmony. In a world with a lot of weird and magical things, somehow this is the most unbelievable thing in the entire movie to me. That's about all I have. That's about all I have. Like, it's Trolls 2. What do you want me to say? Yeah. Again, I almost feel bad because there's somebody in my Discord server who likes this movie, and I'm sorry. I just didn't care for it. Next, I have Spirit Untamed. Oh, yeah. Also bad. And wait, they made a Spirit sequel, and it's not good? Huh. Now, Spirit Untamed is really dang bad. It is so freaking pointless. It doesn't add anything to the Spirit world. It just exists as a lame cash grab. As someone who prefers CGI animation overall, I think the animation in this movie is a huge downgrade. There really was something special about the first movie being 2D animated. Apparently, this is the cheapest DreamWorks animated movie that isn't direct to DVD or streaming, and it sure looks like it. I also hate how it focuses on the humans instead of the horses, as I barely feel like the main horse has any character. The human story is whatever, but it takes too much attention away from the freaking horses. I also just don't buy the bond the girl forms with the horse, and I couldn't get invested in the story. At one point, the horse gets free, so surely the girl would let it go, right? No, for some reason she feels the need to go into the forest and find him, and then a herd of horses come out, and they all get captured except the main one. Well, that didn't feel inorganic at all. There were a couple of cute scenes and one decent joke, but that's about it. There's no reason for this movie to exist. While it's not offensively bad, it's boring and unnecessary. I said one joke. I don't remember what that one funny joke was, because it is one of the most forgettable. I've seen it a few weeks ago, and I barely remember it. It is really forgettable. Next, oh no, Trolls Band Together. Yep, still bad. And thank God, I'm finally done with the Trolls movies. Oh boy. These aren't the worst films I've ever seen. They're perfectly fine for kids, but there is honestly nothing here for adults. I'd say Band Together was better than World Tour, but not by much. The plot fell all over the place as they tried to juggle so many characters. You've got Poppy, Branch, the Brozone Band, they're also Branch's brothers, a new character who just happens to be Poppy's sister, two Bergens from the first film that are married and now and are on a honeymoon, and the villains, these siblings that steal the Trolls' magic so they can sing. They try to give all these characters some development and story relevance, and it's messy how it all comes together. Not only that, it was also painfully predictable. Oh, Poppy talked about having a sister, and her dad hinted that there's a sibling she doesn't know about. I wonder if this new girl troll is a Poppy's sister's. No, I wonder if this new troll girl that they meet is Poppy's sister. Yep, she is. Oh no, she doesn't want to join them on this adventure. I wonder if she's going to pull a Han Solo and change her mind. Oh, guess what? That's exactly what she does. Oh, Branch broke up with his brothers. I wonder if he's going to get back together with them. Yep, that's exactly what happens. It makes the film a boring experience that I get nothing out of. It is clear that these Trolls movies are just not for me. I will most likely never watch them again. I'm just glad it's over and there aren't any more that I have to watch. Yeah, last I checked, it seems like, this is the last one. They're leaving it as a trilogy, which I'm glad about because, they really are just not for me. Ooh, next we have a pretty infamous one. Shark Tale. Finally something from before the 2010s. Yeah. Starring Will Smith, Robert De Niro, Renee Zellweger, Angelina Jolie, Jack Black, and even Martin flippin' Scorsese. The best cast ever in one of the worst movies I have ever seen. A match made in heaven. Shark Tale truly is one of the most baffling films ever made, with its terrible animation, trying too hard humor, ridiculous story, and unlikable characters. And yet, it's also a really fun movie. I still cannot get over the fact that the guy who said Marvel movies aren't cinema voices a pufferfish. I totally get why this is one of those so bad it's good kind of movies, because it truly feels like a special kind of bad. Not much to say about it, honestly. Just go watch Ray Frillis' video on this movie and you'll get the picture. Yeah, pretty much. Next I have Shrek the Third. Where is it? Oh, it's over here. My bad. Over here. Shrek the Third was sort of like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Cars 2, where I found out it had a lot more fans than I initially realized, and as a result, it made me think that I was possibly being too harsh on it by saying it's a bad movie. But just like those two movies I mentioned, I was like, no, this is still bad. I'm sorry, if you like this on that's fine, but I just think it's one of the most nothing movies ever made. It's a lot like Despicable Me's 3 and 4, where it just feels like a cash grab sequel that doesn't have anything to add to the franchise. And while it has some interesting ideas on how to flesh out Shrek's character, it doesn't do a good job fleshing him out, therefore making him feel hollow. Shrek's arc of accepting to become a parent is good on paper, but the execution is really messy. And Prince Charming is a really weird villain that isn't threatening or funny. Nothing in this movie made me laugh. A couple moments made me smirk and think that was a decent joke, but other than that, there really is no reason to watch this movie. It solely exists as an extra film to squeeze more money from Shrek. I don't hate it, I'm just disappointed. I said that, and I'm like, now I'm wondering if Shrek 5 is going to be that way. We'll see. And the last bad movie I have in this tier is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, right here. Yep. Ruby Gillman. Holy cow, this movie is so freaking generic and boring. At first I thought this movie felt like a cross between Luca and Turning Red, but then when I got to the end, I realized, wait a second, this is just The Little Mermaid 2. Yeah, remember that not very good direct-to-DVD sequel? This literally copies that, of all the films to copy. The story between Ruby, her mom, and grandmother were all pretty lame and uninteresting, and even though I didn't watch the trailers, I knew immediately that the mermaid was the villain. I have never seen a movie with a more obvious twist villain than this. Every other character, like Ruby's dad, her brother, her uncle, her high school friends, and her boyfriend, are all ridiculously underdeveloped, and overall this film felt like a waste of time. I guess the Kraken Hunter was a decent character that I kind of liked, but other than that, this movie is just worthless. I can see why it bombed, because it is nothing special. I'm amazed that I wrote this really harsh dialogue, like, holy cow, like, I'm looking at this like, did I really write that? All right, now we move on to the watchable tier, which is, of course, movies that I didn't hate, but they just weren't that fun. They were kind of fun, but they weren't that interesting, you know? And the first movie to mention is the original Trolls. Yeah. Trolls. It's by far the best example I can think of that's perfectly fine, maybe even good, but this is not for me. The animation is fantastic, the environments look incredible, the songs are good, even though I got sick of Can't Stop the Feeling after my family played it over and over again nonstop, and the story is competent. There's nothing inherently wrong with this movie, but I just don't care for it. It feels the most like a children's film, and while that's fine for kids, there's just nothing here for me to latch onto. It's just watchable overall. I don't even know what else I can say. Trolls exists. At least it gave us the unintentionally hilarious singing Kill My Grandma line. Why would you say? Because singing Kill My Grandma, okay? And I feel bad again now, because, again, I'm sorry. Moon, right? That's her name. I'm sorry, but I didn't care for it. Hold on. Next, Sinbad and Legend of the Seven Seas. Oh, right here. Okay. One of DreamWorks' most forgotten films, and I can honestly see why, because this was nothing special. The story wasn't that interesting. It's about Sinbad trying to find his super powerful book so he can save his old friend from dying in his place since he was framed for stealing said book. There are a bunch of problems with this. The Book of Peace isn't really explained, and I don't know what's so important about it. The whole plot happens because Sinbad's friend, Proteus, believes that there is still good in him. But I honestly didn't care about this friendship, and I think if there were flashbacks, I would have at least been somewhat invested. Plus, all this happens because the main villain is a goddess, but I don't know what her motivation is. Basically, this entire plot feels like there's a lot of context missing. With all that said, this movie wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. The animation is really good, the world building is pretty cool, and there are some fun action scenes. Despite the villain being pretty lame, the animation around her is sick. I also really like the music. The best thing I can say about this whole thing is that it was at least watchable. I wasn't bored, but I also wasn't really that interested. Probably never going to watch it again. Nothing to add. Next, I have Home. Right there. Home. Home was one of the movies of all time. There are some good things. There are some good things, bad things, and some just whatever stuff that piles together to make a movie that isn't good or bad. I like the booze technology, and a lot of the visuals do look really cool. Some of the jokes did get a chuckle out of me, and the opening wasn't half bad. The plot and characters or whatever, I don't really care about them. It's perfectly fine. And while I liked some of the jokes, a huge chunk of them were really lame and also just plain gross. I also think this movie has the same problem that Tarzan has, where all the songs sound so freaking similar that it gets tiring. I could have sworn they were all written by the same person. Also, the whole plot around the villain sucks. He barely has any screen time, and the ending twist doesn't make any sense. It just left me with too many questions. So overall, this movie wasn't completely worthless, but I can't see myself ever watching it again. Next! And that next movie is The Croods. Right here, The Croods. The Croods was just kind of whatever. I can't deny that it was enjoyable, because it was. I liked the opening action sequence where they were trying to hunt for an egg. Some of the jokes were pretty good. I love Nick Cage and Ryan Reynolds' performances. But honestly, the entire product wasn't worth it. For whatever reason, the early 2010s were full of animated movies that had overprotective fathers. Ice Age 4, Hotel Transylvania, and this. And man, am I sick of it. It was good in Finding Nemo, but if I see another one, I'm gonna lose it. What's even worse is that I felt like the change at the end when Grug finally gets over his character flaw was super rushed. It's like he was super adamant about his family being inside a cave that he wants to kill Guy because they will want to go with him instead. They have a short conversation, and then boom, he's a changed man. Like, that felt way too fast. Also, the ending where he had to make it over the cliff seriously dragged, and I was thinking, can we roll the credits already? The Croods isn't terrible. It had its moments, but man, is it the definition of watchable. I was also forgot to mention Ryan Reynolds' character is named Guy, and then he later played Guy in Free Guy. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And I have one more movie in watchable, that being Monsters vs. Aliens. Monsters vs. Aliens is fine. It's not awful. The Stephen Colbert president was the best part of the whole thing. I honestly wish he had more screen time. The action in San Francisco was kind of cool, and there were a bunch of funny jokes in the first half. But honestly, when Galaxar captures Susan, that's when I sort of just check out. The alien invasion storyline is just really boring. I just don't find myself caring about anything that's happening. And the jokes stop being funny. Like, what happened, guys? Also, I'm pretty sure Susan completes her character arc about halfway through the movie when she decides she doesn't need a boyfriend and can just be a cool giant, because there's nothing else for her in the second half. Overall, for a movie that was supposed to be a parody of monster films, this just feels like a cheap knockoff. Not bad, but really not that good either. Probably going to be a few more years before I ever watch this again. I almost forgot to mention, I didn't write this down, but I didn't even know this movie had a whole reference to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like, I watched Close Encounters for the first time a couple of years ago, and then I watched this, and I was like, wow, they actually referenced a Steven Spielberg movie with that whole piano scene. So that was really fun. Now we're moving into the okay tier, starting with B movie. B movie. B movie is one of the most insane and bonkers movies I have ever seen, and it's amazing. It reminds me a lot of Roland Emmerich's disaster films like Day After Tomorrow or 2012, where they're just so stupid, but I can't help but smile or laugh at how dumb it really is. This is essentially 3 movies in one. First, you have a story where a bee breaks the rules of never talking to humans and falling in love with one. Then you have the story when that same bee discovers humans have been stealing their honey, so he sues the human race over that. Then you have the story where bees stop making honey because that court case was won, the world is about to end, so they have to fly flowers across the country to save the world. It's all over the place and doesn't mesh at all, but all these stories are just so weird that I was never bored watching it. It truly is one of DreamWorks' weirdest movies, and it totally stands out because of that. Also, Ken is the most sympathetic character DreamWorks has ever created. Yeah, and it's not just because he's voiced by Patrick Warburton. Next, I have Abominable. Okay. Abominable is fine. It's a decently charming movie, but it also could have been better. I did actually enjoy at first seeing Yee's life in the city, bonding with Everest, and a complicated relationship with her family, but then once the journey started, I lost interest. It honestly felt like Everest had infinite powers, because anytime a tense situation happened, I just kept thinking, okay, what's Everest going to do to get them out of this one? It didn't feel like they were in any danger, except when he was tranked. But thankfully, he just conveniently fixed Yee's violin to be magical, because I guess he can do that, and that solves the problem immediately. Like, these magical powers don't feel natural. Not much else to say, except it's alright. Oh, sorry, I accidentally pulled it off. Where was I? Okay. Next, I have Kung Fu Panda 4. Oh boy. I hope this is going to be the last time I'm going to have to talk about this movie. Kung Fu Panda 4 was disappointing. I wouldn't say it's terrible. Poe's still the same lovable character he's been since the beginning. Some of the new characters are fun, the action is cool, and the jokes are funny. It's still a decently fun time. If this were just a standalone film, I wouldn't be as harsh on it. But the fact that this is a sequel to the first 3 films, which all felt like they wanted to tell a story, this just feels like a cash grab. It's just another adventure with Poe with no Furious 5, making it feel more like a TV spin-off movie, and with one of the lamest DreamWorks villains ever. And the ending where all the other villains come back legitimately feels like fan fiction. It was cool seeing Tai Lung again, but Shen and Kai didn't have their voice actors, so it didn't feel like they were the same characters. Also seeing them bow down to Poe at the end just felt wrong. Overall, while I don't hate this film, I still don't like it that much. It's enjoyable whenever I watch it, but in the end, it just feels worthless. At least Jack Black's cover of Baby One More Time slaps. Next I have the very first movie, Ants. Over Kung Fu Panda 4. So, this is where it all started, as a movie that tried to copy Pixar's A Bug's Life, even releasing a whole month before that movie. I prefer Bug's Life a lot more, and this is pretty underwhelming. This is a pretty underwhelming start overall, but I kind of like it. The story and main characters aren't particularly interesting, but I like the ants, voiced by Sylvester Stallone and Gene Hackman. I also think the villain's plan is somewhat fascinating, and the world building can get pretty creative at times. The animation looks okay for 1998, and there were a few times I snickered, but for the most part, this is a somewhat forgettable film that I'm fine with never watching again. Oh, I didn't even realize we go from the first movie to the most recent one, Dogman. I didn't even mean that, but there you go. Dogman is DreamWorks' latest film, and I'd say this movie is in the same vein as Over the Hedge or the Madagascar trilogy. A dumb but fun film. The emotional core is whatever, but the over-the-top action, animation, and just general concept saves it for me. It makes it an enjoyable watch. Honestly, I don't really have much to say. It's decent. If you were curious to see it, I'd say check it out. Oh, and speaking of, Over the Hedge is next. Also an okay. Okay, so earlier last year, I watched this movie once just to see if it was good or not because I genuinely could not remember. And then I found myself thinking it was a 5 out of 10 whatever movie that just didn't do it for me. But when I rewatched it for this video, I'll admit, it got better. It wasn't amazing, but there were some really funny jokes that made the whole thing worth watching. Basically, the opening scene where RJ tries to steal the chips, and literally every single scene with the Verminator. So that helped. I think my biggest issue with this movie is that the action scenes are just a little too ridiculous for my taste. I don't know why that is, but they are just too over the top for me. I just can't help but think this is stupid. I don't know. It's like I'm fine with it in movies like Dogman, but for some reason I just can't get into it. I can't explain it. I understand. I know it sounds hypocritical, but I don't know. But oh well, it's still an okay movie overall, and I'm glad I gave it another chance. Puss in Boots. Isn't this movie incredible? Such an unexpected surprise that blew all of us away, and one of the most culturally influential animated films in the last decade. Wait, that's The Last Wish? Oh yeah, there was a Puss in Boots movie before that. Yeah, it's next. No, seriously, I forgot so much about it when I rewatched it. It's genuinely insane how forgettable this film is. But is it any good? Not really. There's nothing that special about it, but it's not terrible. Just look at Antonio Banderas' amazing vocal performance behind the titular cat. The friendship between Puss and Humpty Dumpty is actually pretty interesting, and this movie birthed a ooh cat that even came back in Last Wish briefly. This movie isn't devoid of quality, but it's also just painfully average. The story is generic, the fun fairy tale parody angle that the Shrek movies made famous is weirdly tame and serious in this one, and the pacing is a little odd. We spend so much time with Puss finding a quest, beginning the quest, then pause and have a super long flashback, then the quest itself happens and it feels weirdly short, and then the climax happens and it's just whatever. This movie is enjoyable, but I just don't get much out of it whenever I see it. Could have been worse, but it also could have been way better. And it is hard overshadowed by Last Wish, which I can't wait to talk about that one. Next, Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. My personal least favorite Madagascar. Yeah, for me, Madagascar 3 is the weakest in the trilogy, but it's still fairly enjoyable. I love the first 20 minutes. Just seeing the gang leave Africa and find the penguins in Monte Cristo, the introduction of Dubois, and the pretty sick car chase that includes the last flight of that plane that has been here since the beginning. It made me think this was going to be my favorite movie. But then they get on the circus train and I suddenly lose interest. None of the circus characters are interesting, and I honestly think ending this trilogy with a circus plot is really baffling. I just don't understand why they went this way. It's still enjoyable at least. The entire sequence in London where they play Katy Perry's Firework is visually impressive, and Dubois still has some cool scenes. Just like the first two, the penguins steal every scene. And it is pretty satisfying seeing the gang finally get back to the zoo, even though they then just join the circus for some reason. Overall, I don't think this was a very good ending, but it's still a decent movie, and I at least don't regret watching it. Next I have The Croods, A New Age. Yeah, way higher than the first one, which is crazy. The Cruise 2 was actually pretty decent. It's not amazing, but it is a huge improvement over the first film. Once again, the animation is incredible, the creature designs are creative, there's a handful of really funny jokes, and the climax had an out-of-nowhere kaiju that was somehow super fun to watch. The story isn't great as the character arcs are just as predictable as the first one, but I'm not as bothered by it because these characters are really charming to be around. Not too much to say, except it's a decently fun time. Also, knowing that this is directed by Joel Crawford, the same man who would go on to direct Puss in Boots 2, is cool. It's a good stepping stone to that masterpiece. Also, I totally ship Grug and Phil. Next, I have Flushed Away. Hey. Flushed Away was Aardman's last project with DreamWorks, and it's pretty alright. It's a lot of fun, no doubt. The story, the characters, and the villains are super entertaining. While I didn't laugh hysterically, the jokes were still really funny. But it's not amazing. I do find the slugs to be a bit annoying. They were a little funny at first, but then they massively overstayed their welcome, and it sort of killed the movie for me. Plus, I feel like the jump into the third act happened a little too fast. But other than that, Flushed Away is still a fun movie overall, and I can see why some people refer to it as one of DreamWorks' most underrated movies. And then I have Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. Oh, sorry, in OK. Okay, I haven't read a single Captain Underpants comic, so I'm not sure if that'll affect how I judge this movie. But I've heard it's a pretty good adaptation, so that's at least something. Anyway, I was honestly shocked how much I enjoyed this film. I usually don't care for potty humor, and yes, this has plenty of that. But there was also a handful of other jokes that made me laugh, or even some that just made me smile. George and Harold are really charming characters. Captain Underpants himself is fun. The animation is really unique, and overall, it's just a fun time. My only real issue is that the climax goes on for a little too long, but other than that, it's enjoyable. And then I have the original Madagascar. Madagascar is a movie that I don't really have strong feelings on. For the longest time, I just saw this as an average film where the penguins were the most enjoyable parts, or the only enjoyable parts. Though on this most recent rewatch, I actually found myself enjoying it a lot more. I still wouldn't call this movie amazing, but it's way funnier than I remember. The four main characters, Alex, Marty, Melman, and Gloria, aren't fantastic, but they're pretty fun characters to hang with, even if Alex is a little too hyper for my taste. Again, though, the penguins steal the show. I just never get tired of watching them do practically anything. The part where they arrive at Antarctica and one of them says, "Well, this sucks," is still one of the funniest moments in cinematic history. The story is fine, I remember most of it, though does anyone else forget what happens in the climax? Every single time I watch this, something happens in the climax and I think, I don't remember this part. It's honestly really strange. But yeah, it's fine, I like it, but I don't love it. And the last movie I have in the OK tier is Madagascar Escape to Africa. I get it. Madagascar 2 is slightly better than the first movie. I'm honestly not sure if I find the first or second one funnier, but I just like the story for this one better. You've got a literal Lion King ripoff with Alex and his father and Discount Scar, the penguins and monkeys rebuilding the plane, and the humans surviving in the wild being led by that old lady who was originally just a throwaway character. Once again, the penguins have the funniest moments, and that scene where they hit the old lady is iconic. Yeah, is she dead? She jumps up. No, like that whole scene feels like a YTP, you know? But it's still not quite a good movie. The Melman and Gloria romance just came out of nowhere. The whole Marty is just like the other Zebras plotline isn't that interesting, and the climax just has a little too much going on. It's still a decent and enjoyable movie all around, though, and for me, it's the best movie of the Madagascar trilogy. Is there something else I forgot? I don't know, maybe. It's probably fine. Wait, I wrote that? What did I forget? I actually don't know. I wrote that down, but I don't remember what I was talking about when I wrote that. Dang it. Oh, that sucks. Actually, I'm looking at this again. Yeah, I feel like there are two more movies I'd put in OK, actually. Sorry. Yeah. The next movie I have is Chicken Run. I haven't seen much Aardman, just so you're aware, but I really enjoyed Chicken Run. The animation is really impressive and still holds up, and the story is pretty fun. Just this group of chickens that needs to escape this farm before they get killed. The pacing was a little slow though, as I felt like they spent too much time on them training to fly, which is even more frustrating since they ultimately don't fly out and instead have to build an airplane. But oh well, it's still really fun as is. Also, why is this movie called Chicken Run even though they fly out? Okay, and the last one I have is Penguins of Madagascar. Penguins of Madagascar is my favorite Madagascar movie. If I had to name the few guilty pleasure movies that I have out there, which there aren't many, this would be one of them. I love the penguins in the trilogy, and sure, maybe it's not a great idea to give them an entire movie, but at the same time, that's just so freaking fun. So I don't mind it. This whole movie is essentially 90 minutes of wacky stuff happening, and I don't care. And there were quite a few funny jokes, like when we see all the octopi are named after famous actors, or the fact that Benedict Cumberbatch literally can't say penguin to save his life. The North Wind characters are fine, I don't really care about them. The villain is decently fun, though not the best I've ever seen. But my biggest problem is that they tried so freaking hard to give the penguins an emotional depth, and it's honestly kind of funny. Like, guys, it's Penguins of Madagascar. Stop trying to tug at my heartstrings. Oh well, I still can't help but really enjoy this movie, flaws and all. Okay, now, finally, we have entered the good tier. I feel like we're getting through this really fast, but yeah, the good tier. Which I have first, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Wait, no, sorry, hold on. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Before that, I have the bad guys. Yeah. Dang, I forgot how much Good Tonight slapped. Anyway, the bad guys is pretty good. The animation is really cool and creative. The characters are all really charming. The action sequences are a lot of fun. The plot had interesting twists that weren't entirely surprising, but they were still cool. And it's overall a good time. Wolf's story arc for becoming a good guy is decent, and his rivalry with Snake is decently compelling. There's a lot to like here. It's not an amazing movie, but it does its job. Not much to say, except it's good. And now I have Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Mr. Peabody and Sherman is a really fun movie. Just the fact that they go back in time and interact with all these historical figures like Leonardo da Vinci, King Tutankhamun, Albert Einstein, and so many more. I'll admit, watching this movie as a kid actually got me interested in history, as I wanted to find out who all these people were. That's pretty dang cool already. I also appreciate that they don't worry about time travel rules, except with the whole two of the same person, the same timeline trope, making it more fun. The main story between the titular characters is decently heartwarming, and I can definitely say I felt some things. It's not the best father-son relationship I've ever seen, but it's good enough for what it is. And there were quite a few LOL moments, like when Peabody said, "Sherman, I've got to get you out of here before you touch yourself." This is generally one of DreamWorks' lesser-known films, and I wouldn't call it an underrated masterpiece like Megamind or Rise of the Guardians, but still a fun time nonetheless. Yeah, that joke I mentioned. I didn't even know that joke was in there for the longest time, and I was like, wow, that was an inappropriate joke that totally went over my head as a kid, but yeah. Next I have Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Okay, this is the only Wallace and Gromit content I have ever seen, so I don't know what to say about this franchise as a whole, but this one movie is incredible. It has a really fun story where Wallace turns into a giant rabbit monster who wants to eat all the vegetables in town, and Gromit has to stop him. The animation is still great, the music is iconic, and overall, it's just a fun time. I don't really have much to say, except I like it. And then I have The Road to El Dorado. Yeah, remember that classic? The Road to El Dorado is a really fun movie. I absolutely love Miguel and Tulio's friendship. They have amazing chemistry, and seeing them go on this adventure to find El Dorado and then proceed to be mistaken for gods is just so much fun. And I also find their conflict towards the end heartbreaking when Miguel decides to stay behind while Tulio wants to leave with all the gold and shell. The resolution happens a little too fast, but it's fine. I also kind of wish this was a musical because the one song the characters actually sing, "It's Tough to Be a God," was really good. The villain isn't particularly interesting, and the third act feels a little forced, But overall, this movie is incredibly enjoyable. I for sure would want a sequel to this, more than something like Boss Baby or Trolls. Oh boy. I'm wondering if this is gonna be. I'm reading this. I'm wondering if this might be my most controversial opinion. I'm not sure, but oh boy, here goes. The Prince of Egypt is next, and it is also in a good tier. The Prince of Egypt is good. It adapts the story of Moses and the Exodus pretty well. Whenever God does something miraculous, it has that wonder and awe that I hoped it would. It also explores a really fascinating relationship with Moses and Ramesses as they start off as brothers but then fall apart, and it's actually really sad. The animation is great, the Hans Zimmer score is phenomenal as always, and it overall does have that epic feel I'd want from a biblical story. Plus, huge props for not toning down the story for kids and actually treating the audience like adults. Like man, if that whole bit where God was like killing all the firstborn sons and all, like, yeah, that's a really dark scene for a quote unquote kids movie, but yeah. But as someone who grew up Christian, there were some things I took issue with. The first 20 minutes or so honestly felt too much like a DreamWorks movie. Seeing the basket with baby Moses getting tossed around the river and almost being eaten by crocodiles, as well as Moses and Ramesses having a chariot race and knocking out the Sphinx's nose, just felt way too out of place for me. Another thing is that there are some inaccuracies, and the idea of it being a musical was a baffling decision to me. Though those last two, I tried my best to ignore that and try and look at this movie as its own thing, ignoring the source material. And I think that's the best way to approach it for me. So no, I wouldn't call this a masterpiece like some people do, but I can't deny the things this movie gets right. It is still a really good movie, nonetheless. I just have a very unique perspective on this, that's all. I wonder if that's going to get me some hate for not putting this movie higher, but oh well. And yeah, all these movies I prefer over Prince of Egypt, but oh well. Next, Kung Fu Panda 3, over here. Kung Fu Panda 3, the ending to the franchise, until it wasn't. But even with the fourth movie out there, I can still watch this and be super satisfied with the ending. Is it as good as the first two? Definitely not, but I still think it's great. You got Poe finally figuring out who he is as an individual, his biological dad coming in and adding some extra conflict with him and Mr. Ping, more Oogway, which is always nice, and Kai. No, he's not a great villain, but he's really good. But he's a really good threat who raises the stakes higher than they've ever been before. Plus, his theme music goes so unnecessarily hard, and I'm not complaining. I sort of see this as the Return of the Jedi or Dark Knight Rises of the trilogy. Yes, it's a bit of a step down in quality, but it still ends on a satisfying note that makes me go, yeah, that was all worth it. Next I have, I wonder if this is going to be another hot take. Here we go. How to Train Your Dragon 2 isn't good as well. This is my least favorite of the three films. Its pacing is a little uneven, mostly with a lot of screen time spent on the side characters who aren't that funny, and overall it doesn't satisfy my love of the trilogy quite as much as the other two. But with that said, it's still an incredible film overall. It's a great sequel because it expands the world and characters, introduces new villains and conflicts, and overall feels bigger in scale. I love the added story around Hiccup and his parents, the cool alpha, no pun intended. Wait, the cool alpha. What pun was there? I actually don't know. And Stoick's death is legitimately heartbreaking. You know how kids were devastated when Mufasa died in Lion King? Well, I didn't grow up with that movie, but this had that same feeling for me. And if you thought John Powell did a great job in the score in the first movie, wait till you get a load of this. This movie is fantastic all around, even if I prefer the other two movies a lot more. Wait, hold on. Oh, wait a minute. I just noticed I got some of this wrong. Everything above Wallace and Gromit isn't great. Oops. Or actually, do I want to change that? No, actually, I take that back. I'm changing my mind. Yeah, these are still in good. I would say. Mm, yeah, I think I'll start there. I'm thinking, do I want to put all the rest of these movies in gray? I feel like I might. Um, well, actually, not with this next one. Okay, okay, I think I'll put one more movie in good, and that'll be Shrek Forever After. Hold on, nope, it goes over here. Yeah, I like Shrek Forever After. It's not as good as the first two, but not only is it 100 times better than the third movie, it's also a really good finale for Shrek. Unlike the third movie, which has some ideas but seemed uninterested in developing them, this one has a fun multiverse story where Shrek signs a contract that erases the day he was born, and thus has only one day to spend in this alternate universe before he dies for good. The stakes are higher than ever, and I genuinely do care to see them figure out how to fall in love with to see him figure out how to fall in love with Fiona. The lesson he learns about not knowing what he have until you lose it is obvious but powerful. It's cool seeing more ogres, a post-apocalyptic world led by Rumpelstiltskin, and also Fat Puss in Boots. And that ending when the day is finally saved, and Shrek tells Fiona that he didn't save her from that tower, she saved him. Dude, that almost brought a tear to my eye. Almost. This is a great finale, and I'm honestly not sure what Shrek 5 is going to do when it comes out. How do you continue on from here? I guess we'll find out in about a year, but even if that movie sucks, I'll always have this film as the perfect closure of the tale of Shrek. Alright, and then the rest of these movies I'm going to put in great. So, spoiler alert. Next we have Spirit, Stallion and the Cimarron. Spirit is great. It's a fairly simple story where a horse gets captured by humans and is forced to go to random places while also trying to get back home. But man, it's effective. I love that the animals don't talk. I still got invested to see this horse go through all these shenanigans, and I'm sure the animation being amazing has a lot to do with that. Hans Zimmer's music also goes so freaking hard, and I honestly wish the pop songs worked there, just so I could listen to more of Zimmer's work. My only real complaint is the Matt Damon narration, which felt unnecessary, and half the time he spelled out exactly what was going on screen, as if I couldn't figure that out. But other than that, this is still easily one of DreamWorks' most underrated films. Yep. And we're almost done. Next we have Rise of the Guardians. I don't see many people talking about this movie. At least Megamind has spawned a bunch of memes and quotable lines despite its poor box office. I haven't seen the same for this movie, and it's a shame because I think this is easily DreamWorks' most underrated film and most deserving of a franchise. The world building is so clever, and seeing these new interpretations of Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, Sandman, and Jack Frost is so fun. It's exciting, and I really want to see more of it and what other classic mythological characters would look like. But even without those sequels, this is still a great film on its own. Jack has a really compelling character arc about discovering his purpose, the world building is again cool, and the action is fun. The villain is fine, not amazing, but he has his moments. I need this movie to become a cult classic soon, because it's actually frustrating that so little people even know this movie exists. Next I have Kung Fu Panda 2. Kung Fu Panda 2 isn't quite as good as the first movie in my opinion. It does drag a little, the fight scenes feel a little weightless, and it's not quite as funny. But these are just small weaknesses, because otherwise, this movie is phenomenal. It's a great sequel because it dares to be darker, literally implying that the villain committed genocide, and it also chooses to explore Poe's character further. He goes on this journey where he questions where he came from, assuming that it'll explain who he is. But by the end, he learns that his past does not define him, his present does. Meanwhile, Shen refuses to move on from his past, and that's why he is destined to fail. Lots of people say he's a great villain, and I can definitely agree with that. This movie overall is powerful with its themes and messages, and it's amazing that DreamWorks didn't water it down to just being a fun comedy film. Even if I disagree that it's the best Kung Fu Panda movie, I honestly couldn't argue with anyone who says that because I totally get it. It's still fantastic. Next, their first super popular movie, that of course being Shrek. I mean, what can I say about Shrek that hasn't already been said? This movie is incredible. It was unique for the time, being a subversive take on fairy tales, but also tells a genuinely heartwarming love story that I care about. The jokes still make me laugh, and even when they aren't funny, I still can't help but crack a smile. The story is fairly straightforward, but the characters are interesting. It's fun seeing Shrek resent the idea of love, but then fall for it in the end. And Fiona also learning that not should be a, and also Fiona learning that not should be a simple fairy tale when she accepts her ogre body. I wrote that weird, but I hope you get what I was saying. I've heard people talk about how this movie spawned so many weird memes on the internet that sort of ruined the film. And I am so thankful I missed all of that, and I can still enjoy this movie as is. Next, I have The Wild Robot. Man, The Wild Robot got a lot better the second time around. This film is a lot like How to Train Your Dragon, and I'm not saying that just because both were directed by Chris Sanders. The story isn't that original, and it's surely something I've seen before, but just like How to Train Your Dragon, that doesn't matter because they both are still fantastic films because of amazing animation and heartwarming emotion underneath. The concept of a robot crashing onto an island was already cool enough, but then you throw in the story where she raises a bird after accidentally killing his family? Okay, now you've got me. By the way, I'm so glad that they didn't wait until the last 30 minutes for Bright Bill to find out what happened to his family. He finds out pretty quickly once he gets old enough, and then we can move on to Roz helping him learn to fly, plus a story where she brings the island together, and then they all fight back when Roz's superiors find her. The ending is both heartbreaking and heartwarming, and I almost teared up. I also love Fink's story. I didn't expect him to have an arc where he learns to trust and care for others, but dang does it work. The animation is stunning, the score is excellent, there's just so much to love about this film. Apparently they're making a sequel, which I'm a little hesitant about, because this tells a great standalone story. But if it's anything like this masterpiece, then I can't wait to see it. And then I have the original Kung Fu Panda. The fact that the writers, directors, animators, voice actors, music composers, and practically everyone involved went this hard on a movie with the title Kung Fu Panda is still one of the coolest things that has ever happened in Hollywood. Yeah, this movie slaps. The animation still looks incredible over 15 years later. Jack Black's vocal performance as Poe does a great job making him charming and likable. The fight scenes are insanely cool. Tai Lung is a really compelling villain. The score by Hans Zimmer and John Powell is phenomenal, and the underlying message of believing in yourself is powerful and definitely something that has helped me personally. As much as I enjoy the sequels, for me, Kung Fu Panda 1 is still the best movie in the series. Next I have How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Right there. Still pretty fun how 2019 was the year of endings. How to Train Your Dragon, The Infinity Saga, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, It, X-Men, and Toy Story, at least at the time. I'd say I prefer Endgame overall, but I think this movie is technically a better put together film, and it wraps up the story so beautifully. When I've seen this movie multiple times and I still get emotional when I've seen this movie multiple times and I still get emotional, that's when you know you've written a satisfying finale. I love that this movie focuses more on Toothless. The first two movies were solely about what Hiccup wanted, but here we finally ask the question, what does Toothless want? The lesson is heartbreaking, as Hiccup has to realize that love means you have to let go, and he does when he accepts that the world will never coexist with dragons peacefully. There will always be another Drago or Grimmel out there, so he allows the dragons to hide in the hidden world. What a perfect ending. As much as I enjoy the second movie, I actually prefer this film overall, as it still gets me to tear up. And isn't it cool too that even DreamWorks is aware of that? We got a fourth Kung Fu Panda movie, despite the third one being a good ending. Shrek supposedly ending with four, yeah, we're getting another one. Even they realize How to Train Your Dragon is good to stop here, which is why they're making a live action remake instead. But I'm not going to be too upset if that movie sucks, because I will always have the animated trilogy right here to watch and enjoy. One of the best movie trilogies of all time. Next, I have Megamind. Gosh, I love Megamind. First, I want to tell you this embarrassing story. When I first watched this movie when I was around 10 years old, I didn't like it. I was a huge superhero fan, and something about it just felt off. Why does a hero die? Why does a new hero turn into a villain? Why does a villain turn into a new hero? It felt odd and misguided for me at the time. What an idiot I was. Because that is exactly the point of this movie. It's a superhero parody film that intentionally makes fun of superhero tropes, like how the hero does all this work just to get the girl, but at the same time, it tells an extremely clever story of fate versus choice that works surprisingly well. Megamind thinks he is destined to be a supervillain before he eventually realizes that's not who he is if he doesn't want to be. Same thing for Metro Man as a superhero. Meanwhile, Hal shows that a misogynistic a-hole having superpowers is really scary, proving that having powers does not suddenly make you a better person. Oh, and this movie is hilarious. I've seen this movie so many times, and while not all of it makes me laugh out loud, a handful of jokes still tickle me. How is, "Oh my giant blue head," the funniest line in cinematic history? I am so glad that I re-examined this movie like everyone else did. It really is the animated version of The Shawshank Redemption, a movie that bombed when it first came out, but slowly grew more and more of an audience, and now it's considered a classic. I wish I could make some sort of video on this movie, but there's already plenty of amazing ones out there. Bottom line is, this movie is incredible. I don't think I'll ever get tired of rewatching it. Next, we have Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Gosh, it is still incredible to see how good Puss in Boots 2 is. Like, where did this masterpiece even come from? And why did they go this hard? There's just so much to love here. Somehow the plot about this being a race to find the wishing star is the least interesting part of this movie. There are 8 characters to focus on, and on paper that might get overwhelming, but they balance it out surprisingly well. There's Puss in Boots himself, who has a legitimately amazing character arc where he becomes too overconfident with having 9 lives and being legend loved by all, before eventually deciding to slow down and live his last life with his friends. Kitty Softpaws doesn't trust anyone, but then learns to by the end. Perito isn't just a comic relief, he's the heart of the film, as he's incredibly nice and caring to others, and that helps Puss and Kitty's characters. Goldilocks wants to have a human family before she learns to accept the 3 bears as that real family. Big Jack Horner isn't deep or complex, but dang, he is so freaking funny and evil that it doesn't matter. But obviously, the biggest standout is Death himself. What an incredible villain. He doesn't have too much screen time, but whenever he is on screen, he is terrifying. You understand why Puss is afraid of him, and his motivation makes sense. And the way his story in his film ends is so smart. Puss doesn't technically defeat him, he just decides to stop running away and live his life, which isn't what Death wanted when he decided to kill Puss early. All of this already makes this a 9 out of 10 film, but on top of that, you've got amazing animation, hilarious jokes, fantastic action, and for being a Shrek spin-off movie that was made over a decade after the last one, it doesn't shove a bunch of fan service in your face. This movie is committed to telling this one story about Puss in Boots. It just happens to take place in the same universe as Shrek. Oh man, I can go on and on about this movie, but I gotta stop at some point. The Last Wish for sure deserves all the attention it's got, and it will continue to be loved 10 years later. I can't wait to see kids grow up with this and rave about how good it is when they get older. By the way, remember how this movie ended by teasing Shrek 5, and now we're all scared of it? Yeah. And next I have Shrek 2 in great. Shrek 2 is phenomenal. It's better than the first one in every way except the soundtrack. But hey, Shrek 1 didn't have Holding Out for a Hero in the climax. Seriously, it's amazing how incredible that sequence is. But even ignoring that scene, this is still one of the best sequels ever made because it actually continues the story in a natural way. Seeing Shrek having to go against Fiona's parents, and the father in particular not willing to accept this marriage, and so Shrek believes he has to become something better just to make Fiona happy. It's extremely relatable as someone who is constantly too hard on myself because I don't think I'm good enough. The resolution is so freaking sweet and wholesome. It's genuinely crazy that this movie is more remembered for being a comedy, but it's also extremely heartwarming as well. The Fairy Godmother is a great villain. Puss in Boots is a really fun new side character. The animation still looks really good 20 years later. There's just so much to love about Shrek 2. It's up there as one of my favorite DreamWorks movies. And, I mean, you can obviously tell just by looking at this what my favorite one is. But yep, my personal favorite DreamWorks movie is the original How to Train a Dragon. The story isn't anything new. Human character discovers that a particular animal isn't as hostile as they assume, but it's executed so well here that I don't mind. The fact that dragons steal food from Berk so they can feed an even bigger dragon is pretty genius. But more than that, then you have the really strong bond Hiccup forms with Toothless. It's so natural and heartwarming. His rocky relationship with his dad is well developed too. While I love the two sequels for what they are, this movie just has the best pacing by far. No scene is wasted. Everyone serves a purpose. The animation, while a tad dated now, still mostly holds up. The flying scenes are incredible, and I'm so mad I missed this movie in 3D. Oh, and the music is phenomenal. Whenever I think of John Powell being an underrated composer, this is the film that comes to mind. So many moments in this movie, whenever he'd play the main theme, I'd always get chills. I mean, yeah, it's How to Train Your Dragon. It's still great 15 years later. And I am so glad we don't have an unnecessary live-action remake coming. Yeah, that's about it. Don't really have too much of a conclusion I can think of. Yeah, that's my DreamWorks animated tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was worth the wait too, because I put up that poll months ago. So I hope it was worth waiting for this. And yeah, that'll be all for now. So peace.